Shalom, all praises unto Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Racha Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and shalom to the hopeful elect Akim that are teaching this word. Shalom Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Racha Kodash. Now, as you can see here, this is a video. This is quite a good channel. And it's a Italian woman, and she goes into basically, race and history in America, basically. And she's got a few videos, talking about basically race in America and how Italians, came to be considered as white in the land of America, right, which is Babylon. Which we've been saying for years that, you got a lot of Italians and Irish and also, Greeks, and not just Italians and Irish, but so-called Europeans that consider themselves white. A lot of them have Negro ancestry, all right? But we mainly speak about, the Italians and the Irish because, that's like, it's basically a known fact that it's known, but no one, it's known, but basically it's like in your face, but no one wants to talk about it. No one talks about it, basically. Like you have the black Italians, the southern Italians, which a lot of them look straight up dark skin. And then you have the black Irish, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, So why were these things being said about them? Why did those people in America, those ethnic groups, get persecuted? In America, they got persecuted along with the so-called Negroes in America. Of course, we know that Jake, when I say Jake, I'm talking about the tribe of Judah, the so-called Negroes caught it the worst. But why did these so-called people that could call themselves white today, Italians and Irish, why were they being persecuted? Because the elite powers that be know that they have black blood in them. A lot of those people have black ancestry, man, so-called black, so-called Negro ancestry. All right, so I'm going to play some of this clip here and I want to read some of these scriptures. And we've been saying this for years, but it's the Lord, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai, revealing more and more truth on the earth, man. So I'm going to just play this clip here.
The South. Northern Italians considered Southern Italians racially inferior and too African to be a part of Europe. The story of the Italian immigrants' journey from a racialized...
Did you hear that? The Southern Italians were considered too African to be considered a part of Europe, to basically fit into so-called white society. Why? That's that history, man. The Moorish empires. The land of Italy has been invaded, in particular the South, by our people. Like we always said, the so-called Negroes ruled Europe. We've been saying it for 1,000 years, the Dark Ages. And what were we doing? We were mingling our seed in those lands. So it only makes sense that our people are going to be scattered looking like the other nations today. All right?
In the 19th century to white Americans in the 20th century sheds light on how much race is just a construct in the United States. Italians became white because of something that happened in Louisiana. Hi, my name is Danielle Romero, and I'm so glad that you're here with me again on my channel, where I talk about genealogy, ancestry, hidden heritage, and it's amazing how interconnected the world is. Congress had initially envisioned a white, Protestant, and culturally homogenous America when in 1790 it declared that only, quote, free white persons could become naturalized citizens. Waves of culturally diverse immigrants from Europe in the 19th century changed this perception, and Americans adopted a more restrictive, politicized view of whiteness. Because of their darker complexions, Italians, in particular Southern Italians, like my dad's family, were not considered white. This is particularly dangerous in the American South, where Italians were the second most common targets of lynchings, and in some areas were semi-segregated.
Camden Town Brewery. That's fresh as hells.
Commercials, man.
Italian immigrants, particularly those from southern Italy, like my family, faced racial discrimination in both Italy and the United States. I was able to find some documents showing my dad's great aunts coming over, and on the manifest for the ship, they would mark your nationality. A lot of them would say Italy, Italy, Italy. And for his family, it said Italy. And then as a separate designation, South, just to let you know that they weren't Northern Italian. Northern Italians considered Southern Italians racially inferior and too African to be a part of Europe. In the United States, Italian immigrants were subjected to racist stereotypes in books, magazines, newspapers, and faced discrimination in schools, movie houses, labor unions, and public spaces. Italians who accepted what was considered a black job or chose to live among African Americans, which was a very common thing. They often integrated into the same neighborhoods, were marked as Black, and they faced violence from the mobs in the South in the same way. A huge part of this history, the Italian American experience, is connected to New Orleans. I want to talk about...
So, I mean, there's more in this clip, but that's pretty... There's more in this video. You should check out the channel. It's called NYTN, right? And she's got a lot of good videos. But there's more in this clip, but that's enough. That's the point. I'm gonna read some scriptures. But you see how there's more that she says, and she also goes into it later how white society, which the elites that be of America, they basically started integrating the Italians more into their society. So now Italians in America would more than likely consider themselves white. Now a lot of them do know that they have Black ancestry, but but it goes back to Jacob and Esau, basically. Esau's in the power seat, so because they look like Edomites, a lot of them, they're gonna basically side with who's in power so they can get a better ride, basically. That's what's going on, all right? But this is in the history, so a lot of them, but the point is for edification, a lot of people in Europe, in particular Italians and Irish, and all over Europe have so-called Negro ancestry, and that's a fact, all right? So I wanted to read this. This is Isaiah. So lucky, I'm going to read this. Isaiah 25 and 7, right? Isaiah 25, and all this history is coming out, man. All right, this Esau's lies are are getting unstuck, all right? Isaiah 25 and 7, and all this confusion, man. Isaiah 25 and 7, and he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations, all right? And what's the mountain? The mountain represents basically the government, basically. For lack of a better word, the mountain is like pretty much, let's say like the earth we live in, the mountain represents the governments, basically. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations, and the veil that's spread over all nations. So in particular, by way of America, the governments of America, the veil they've spread over all nations is what? Lies, all right? Which is really, and who's the head of America? The so-called white man, the Edomites. And they've spread lies, man, all right? And that's the veil that they've covered people's eyes with. And they've retaught the earth pretty much. The so-called white man's retaught the earth pretty much, and he spread lies, all right? So that's the veil, but the Lord said, so who's the one that's going to destroy that veil? The Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. So it's the Lord destroying the lies of the so-called white man, basically. Destroying the lies of the American so-called white man, the English so-called white man, the Edomites as a whole. All right. The Lord's destroying their lies, man. All right. You see, because Esau, the way Esau paints the narrative is pretty much he's everyone in history. No other people had a history. So-called blacks and Latinos never had no history. That's the lies he spread. But the history of our people runs deep, man. And how's the Lord destroying the lies? By way of his prophets, basically. The men teaching this word, man. Beginning with the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, we've been saying that you've got so-called Negroes or Israelites, looking like so-called white people, and particularly the Italians, the Irish. We've been saying that for years. And now this truth's coming out, man, more and more. So that's the veil being destroyed. And Esau, these devils, they painted their image up, as if they're the greatest people on the earth, as if to look like them, is something to be marveled at. And that's what it was. That's why even that woman, she tells you in her video that America from its beginning was supposed to be, a homogeneously white nation, particularly for so-called white folks. That's why they persecuted those dark Italians that came over there, because they knew that they were so-called Negroes. Why do you think they persecute so-called black people today in America? The racial structure that's there is to keep the so-called white man at top, man. All right? But in reality, the so-called white man's really inferior. To look like these so-called white people is inferior. So lucky, I'm going to read the scriptures here. So this is a point to prove that. This is Numbers 12 and 9. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle. And behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. Yeah, because Miriam was talking against Moses, because pretty much I believe he was, because Moses was with an Ethiopian woman, Miriam, she basically was being Eve, basically, back chatting to him, basically. So what did the Lord do to her? He said, Miriam became leprous as white as snow. So the Lord made her leprous as white as snow. Pretty much he made her look like a so-called white woman. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said unto Moses, Alas, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly and wherein we have sinned. Yeah, so he made her look like an Edomite. He didn't make her an Edomite. He made her flesh. He made the pigment of her flesh. Basically, she was a woman of color, a so-called black woman, and he took that look away from her and gave her the look of a so-called white woman, basically. That which is what these so-called white people have today, leprosy. They're leprous. Their look is really a sin. You see? But that's why they've had to keep up these lies that other nations are inferior to them. Because when you rule, you've got to put yourself above everyone. And you've got to put it in people's minds that you're over them. And that's what Esau has done. That's why any ethnic group coming to America, he showed you what they were doing to them Italians. They were painting those pictures of them as looking, basically looking like beasts, looking inferior, cleaning the Edomite people's shoes. You saw that. Look, they put the picture of the Italian looking dude cleaning the politician's shoes. And they've been doing that. Who did they start all these things off with? They started all of that off with our people. They paint them caricatures of our people, eating watermelons and chicken, with the curly hair. They make our people, the cartoons with the big lips to basically put it into their minds of the nation that through their media that we're inferior, pretty much, and to look like Edomites is superior. And that's fucked our people's heads up till this day. But look what the Lord said. The Lord said, and Aaron said unto Moses, Alas, I beseech thee, lay not this sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly and wherein we have sinned. Yes, so it's a sin to that leprous look, to look as white as snow, like what the Lord did unto Miriam. All right, that's really a sin. To look like so-called white people is really a sin. It's a curse. Okay, and all of this truth's coming out. And that's why even now, and what proves that is if these so-called white people were so superior, what proves that is why do most of these white girls and white guys run to the so-called, run to tanning salons and whatnot? Because innately in their spirit, they know to look like them is wrong. You need pigment in your flesh, which they don't have. All right. So it says, and Aaron said unto Moses, Alas, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly and wherein we have sinned. Let her not be as one dead. All right. So that look is that look of an Edomite is to look dead, basically. Of whom the flesh is half consumed when he cometh out of his mother's womb. And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, Heal her now, O Lord, I beseech thee, which the Lord did in the end. He gave her back her pigment. But the point is, to look like these so-called white folks is a curse. But what they've done is they painted their image up as if, they're the people of the Lord. To look like them is the blessing, which it is in this world, because their image is what rules, right? But in the long run, in the grand scheme of things, as they say, it's a curse, because they're going to be brought down and the rightful heirs are going to be put on top. The rightful look, which is to look like a so-called Negro, a Latino, Native American, a person of color, in particular, Israelite, is going to be exalted once again forever. See, in this world, that's what makes, that look lets them get away with things. That's why a lot of them Italians today, in particular, like them Southern Italians, they want to really shun away from the fact that they have black blood in them. They deny it. They don't want to speak on it. All right. But it's funny because this woman now, she's bringing out, truth on it. Let me play a bit more of this. She's bringing out more truth on this, on how the Italians became white. You know, so it's interesting, and we've been saying this for years. So I'm gonna play this here, and even when you read about the image of the Lord, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, right? The J word, Yahweh Shai, Yahweh B'Hashem, Yahweh Shai. All right, he's a man of color. All right, it tells you he's a dark-skinned man. So all these lies are being Esau's lies are being destroyed, man. So I'm gonna play a bit more of this here. Even people in the world, this woman's in the world, and she's bringing out this information. And it's edifying.
And Italians navigating the Jim Crow South. Because, to my surprise, Italians and Sicilians, and I'm going to use that term interchangeably because for my family, it kind of is interchangeable, but it is different. And so when we're talking about Italy, you know, you have like the boot, and my family is mostly from like toe of the boot in southern Italy, and then Sicily is this island that was its own kingdom, and then became part of Italy proper. I'll probably be using them interchangeably because I use them interchangeably for my own self-identification. So between 1880 and 1920, there was an economic crisis following this unification that was happening in Italy. And there was just like a lot of social unrest, and about 4 million Italians, who were mostly Southern Italians, like my family, they immigrated to the United States. A lot of these Italian Americans and Sicilian Americans were recruited to fill a labor shortage that was produced by the rapidly industrializing United States.
I mean that she goes into more in there. There's more in that. But you don't want to read this here, you know, pretty much to show the color also of the Lord in the scriptures. All right, he's a man of color. So all these lies of the so-called white man's is being destroyed. All right, Revelation 1:13, and then the reason why he's kept himself. They've had to tell these lies is to keep our people oppressed, all right? Keep so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans away from what? The truth. You know, and not just to so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans directly, but also to our people that are scattered. Because you got our people that look like that woman in the video. She's more than likely, she's an Israelite. She's a Southern Italian descent, all right? And I'm sure if you used to tell her, you know, about her, mention her ancestry, she wouldn't deny it. That's why she's making those videos about it. All right, that she's got so-called African ancestry, which we know is Israelite ancestry, you know, that Negro blood. So this is Revelation 1:13. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, Revelation 1:13. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet. And this is the description of the Lord. He said his head and his hairs were white like wool. All right. First of all, he wore a garment down to his foot. All right. He said his head and his hairs were white and woolly. And when you watch that video later on, they describe the Southern Italians as having swarthy hair, meaning basically, I believe that goes into basically like kinky curly hair like wool basically. Who has swarthy curly hair? So-called Negroes, so-called Hispanics. You even be seeing some of the Mexicans when they basically have afros, man. All right. So he said his head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow. And his eyes were, so his head and his hairs were white like wool, all right? So-called afro hair, man. You know, curly, bushy hair, basically. As white as snow. And his eyes were as a flame of fire, all right? And his feet like unto fine brass. This is the point I want to get. His feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace. And his voice as the sound of many waters. So this is describing whom the world ignorantly calls that J word. And we know him as Yahweh Shai. So it said his feet was like fine brass, all right? Which is a derivative of brown, which is brown basically, as like a penny. It says as if they burned in a furnace. So but the Lord, it goes further to say as if it burned in a furnace. So he's a particularly a dark-skinned man, all right? And the elites of this world know this. But you see, if they told our people are in a blind state, man. That's the point. So that's why they fall for the lies of the so-called white man. You know, the people of the earth as a whole are in a blind state. But guess what? That's all being destroyed by the Lord, man. All right? truth's coming out. More truth's coming out. And the Lord Yahweh Shai is getting ready to return. And when he returns, he ain't going to look like that image that they have up of whom they portraying as the son of the Lord, man. All right. So this truth's coming out, man, you know, and also you got our people scattered looking like so-called white folks also, man. All right. We've been saying that for years. And now even there's more like this, like that woman's video. There's more videos coming out on it. All right. So, you know, with that, I'm going to say all praises unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha, Quadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. And shalom to the hopeful elect Akim that are teaching this word. Shalom, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha, Quadash. Shalom, shalom.